Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh to all your IJM student doing PhD and Master by Research. So today we are going to go through how to write a good research proposal. I'm Professor Dr. Jamalia Said from Accounting Research Institute, University Technology Mara. Here is the presentation outline. I'm going to start with what is actually research proposal. Okay. Then we move on to the content of research proposal. Okay, basically content of the research proposal, you have to have, of course, the title of your research proposal. Okay, and before you enroll as PhD student during your application to be your ITM student, you prepared a brief research proposal, right? And in that brief research proposal, you have title. Okay, so I'm not sure if you are going to stick to the same title or you're going to change to new title after your initial discussion with supervisor. So the title is important. After that title, you are going to have introduction. Maybe introduction is about 1 to 1.5 page. I'm going to tell you what should be in the introduction, what you should write in the introduction. After the introduction section, you have to have a problem statement section. Okay, problem statement is, this is the hardest part. I think student normally is having difficulties to write a clear problem statement. Always we receive comment from examiners, assessors. Okay, the comment is very standard. Your problem statement is not clear. Okay, so you need to really spend time on how to write a good problem statement. So after problem statement, you write research objective, research question, and if necessary, research hypothesis. It depends on the methodology of that you're going to adopt for your uh, research. Okay. Then this is followed by literature review, theoretical framework, then finally methodology. Okay. So basically, what is a research proposal? Academic research proposal. Academic research proposal is actually overall plan, scheme, structure, strategy on how to carry out your research from the beginning till the end. So having a good research proposal will guide you to complete your PhD within the time frame. So to write a good research proposal, of course, you have to have a good idea on what you're going to do research. Okay, to get the idea, to get a good idea, of course, you have to read a lot. You have to read a lot of articles and journal. You have to read also thesis to get good idea of research proposal. Since you're writing research proposal, at the end of the day, you're going to write a thesis. I strongly advise you to read thesis also to get a good idea, because reading article is a must. Okay, but since you're writing a thesis, but you are actually advisable for you to get to read a thesis to get the overall idea of what is the expectation of a thesis, because writing an article and writing a thesis style of writing is totally different. Basically, we prepare research proposal. First is to guide us, okay, guide us on what we are going to do now and the next step. Okay, so basically also from the research proposal, you are able to plan when you are going to do what. For example, in semester 1, I have to finish certain level of output. In second semester, I have to do the DRP if you are full-time student. In third semester, I'm going to finish, for example, research design or the instrument design. Okay, semester 3. Semester 4 is the data collection. Semester 5, data analysis. And in semester 6, you are going to finish up the last chapter, conclusion. So research proposal will guide you into that. So it's actually a backbone of the thesis. Not to have a good research proposal is actually a sign, not a good sign for you to be able to finish your thesis. So basically the structure of research proposal, whether for master or PhD, are almost the same, except the coverage of course for master program is going to be slightly shallow as compared to PhDs, must be in great detail. Okay, so for you to write a good research proposal, I really expect a contribution for your research proposal and also originality. What different is your research as compared to previous studies? How different is yours compared to previous study in terms of variables, in terms of the theory used, in terms of the methodology adopted, in terms of the measurement of the variable, maybe in terms of analysis, maybe in terms of theory you use or methodology, or maybe in terms of the finding. Okay, so how different is yours compared to others? Okay, and I hope this contribution or this originality lasted until you sit for your viva, because you don't want to realize during the final stage of your research, actually some other student in another university has been doing exactly the same what you have been, you're going to present during your viva. So make sure there is actually difference between yours and others. So basically, research proposal must be able to answer 5 main questions. What are the questions? What, why, where, when, and how? What? What is the topic that you want to cover actually? What is the objective of your study? Okay, that is the working title of your research. What are the keywords? The keyword normally come from the title, or the variable, or the theory. The keywords of your study. And why? Why do you want to do research on this? For example, if you are doing on CSR, corporate social responsibility, why you want to do on CSR? Or if you are doing on fraud in Malaysia, why you want to do in fraud? Why? So what is the problem with fraud? What is the problem with CSR that trigger you into study this topic? Okay, if you are doing on money laundering, what is the problem with money laundering? What have been done by previous researchers on money laundering? Why is it important for you to study money laundering in Malaysia? So that is the why question. Where is about the sample of your study? If you are doing on CSR, which CSR, whose CSR you are working, you are trying to examine? Is it company listed in Bursa, or maybe you are just looking at construction companies, or maybe you are focusing on uh, charity organization, or maybe you're looking at public sector CSR. So what is the population of your study? And from the population, of course, you have to do sampling. It's not very likely you are going to cover the whole population, but some study did cover the whole population, especially if it involves secondary data analysis where the data are available. Okay. So that is the setting of his study, the question of, to answer the question of where. The next question is when. When? What the period for data collection? Is it questionnaire? Maybe if questionnaire you're going to collect using cross-sectional, you distribute the whole set of questionnaire to the whole sample within 6 months, for example. Or maybe if you're doing secondary data, so your coverage is maybe from 9 data and report from 2020, 2010 to 2018, for example. When? Okay. Or maybe if you are doing country level study, you are looking at what factors contribute to economic growth of developing countries. You are looking at data from 1980 to 2015. So when? So those are questions that you need to answer in your research proposal. And finally, how are you going to conduct the study? To answer the research objective, how are you going to conduct the study? Are you going to use quantitative or are you going to use qualitative? Or if you are doing quantitative, how are you going to collect the data? Are you going to interview? Are you going to distribute questionnaire? Okay. If you are doing qualitative, it's the same thing. Okay. So, and finally, how are you going to analyze the data? If you are doing qualitative, what kind of software you are going to use? If you are using quantitative approach, what kind of software you are going to use? So how how are you going to start? Basically, at this point, I think it's a bit. I'm very sure you have your own topic. So if you have not, so the first step you have to have is to have general idea on the area you want to do. If you are from accounting, accounting is broad. So make it narrow. Okay, accounting is too general. You have to narrow it down. Business is too narrow, too broad, too general. Narrow it down. Engineering is very broad area. You narrow it down. For example, in accounting alone, you have management accounting, financial accounting, auditing, taxation. Which accounting part you want to focus on? So don't make it too general. Make it a bit specific. Which part of the accounting or which part of management accounting you're going to focus. Okay, if you are doing business again, it's the same thing. You have a broad area or you have to narrow it down to which part of business you are going to focus. How to get the idea? You have to read a lot, meet a lot of people, attend conference, talk to people, then you get good idea. Or maybe if you read articles, you read thesis, or you read journal, at the end of the article, in the last section, normally they have one section that is known as um, future research. So the authors normally, the writers will provide some suggestion, the limitation of his study or her study. So they will propose some area of research to be conducted in the future to overcome the limitation of his or her study. So you may pick up from that also. So next one is to refine your idea, develop keywords. Okay, keywords that which come from the variable of your study. To ask with more reading, I think you'll get more ideas on what you plan to do. I do not know whether this is a good advice or not. If some of my students, they develop the idea by reading thesis of uh, reading an established thesis. Because if you download some thesis, you notice that the thesis is not of high standard. You can look at by the number of page the student prepared. So make sure you choose the good thesis related to your area. At this point, I believe you have your idea on the area to do. So, for example, if you think you plan to do on fraud, you just extract or download, say, a few theses on fraud. Oh, of course, at this point, I believe you have decided also whether you are going to use qualitative and quantitative depending the objective of your study. So download thesis related to your area, which is fraud, for example, or CSR, for example. Then having to adopt the same methodology, qualitative methodology. So if your methodology is quantitative, try to download more thesis on quantitative. If you are doing on qualitative, the same thing happen. Download as many thesis on that particular area, on your area. that using the same methodology that you plan to do. Okay. Then from that, you identify the gap. Oh, this thesis is using outdated theory, but the variable is very good. Oh, this thesis, the theory is the latest, but the variable is not suitable in the context of Malaysia, for example. Or the other thesis is good because of something. Can from this thesis you actually combine and get create your own one, so it become a new contribution actually. Okay, so basically when come to doing PhD or doing master, the keyword is read and read. If you read a lot, you get a lot of ideas, you can write good proposal. So basically this is the proposal content. So first I expect normally IPSis expect, of course, number one, you have to have the title of your thesis. So if you are not sure that it's going to be a final title, you may put that as working title because title keep changing. Okay, so don't worry if you keep changing your title. After the title is the introduction, of course, then problem statement, research objective, research question, and if necessary, research hypothesis. Then you prepare literature review, and after that, theoretical framework, then methodology of the study, and the rest are like your reference, appendix is also part of the proposal. So title. So student always ask, how long should be our title? What is the maximum words for a title? My answer is very simple. Uh, make sure your title is as short as possible, but title must contain cause, effect, sample. So in the title of your proposal, I want to see the cause, the effect, and the sample. I'll show you some example of thesis that having these three things that examiners or readers are looking for. So normally you can actually develop a good title if you are clear of the research objective, because title reflect the objective of the study. So having a clear objective will actually determine the choice of good title. Okay, so how to find a good title of research proposal? Again, I said you may refer to thesis. That is the best. Actually, referring to article is also possible, but you have to remember articles normally come from good article come from thesis. So normally from one thesis, students or writer will produce a few papers, a few articles. That's why again referring to thesis to find the title is actually advisable, because article normally too narrow. The title is very narrow. For example, to examine the mediating effect of X on the relationship between A and B. So it's very specific, because that article is focusing on one of the objective or the thesis. But since thesis is, I would say, the coverage should be bigger, so the title should be also not mediating. Instead, you have to put the general title. Maybe by putting some example, you get more, you can understand more what I want to say. So this is the example of title that you need to have. First, cause, effect, sample. So look at the first sample or example of title. examination on money laundering risk judgment, the influences of individual, contextual, and organizational factors on bank officers. I think I just get this title from one of the students doing PhD. So I can't and paste. Maybe there is changes. I'm not sure, but this is the working title. I like this working title because it fulfill the requirement of cause effect sample. So this study, from this title, I know that the student is actually trying to examine whether individual factors, contextual factors, and organizational factors may influence bank officers' money laundering risk judgment. So their ability to make good or bad judgment about the occurrence of money laundering depending on number one, individual, contextual, or and organizational factors. So at the end of the day, we do not know what is the finding is like, but obviously the title reflect the objective of the study. Okay, number two, assessing integrity violation in Malaysian government department, the organizational fraud triangle perspective. I like this title because I know maybe the student have many factors trying to examine what are the factors that influence integrity violation. But maybe the factors are 4 or 5, which is too much if they want to put everything in the title of the proposal. So the student is smart enough by replacing the factors into by putting the theory inside the title. So the student, by looking at this title, we know that the student is trying to examine what are the factors proposed by organizational fraud triangle theories that influence integrity violation. So what is the setting of the study? Malaysian government. So cause, effect, and sample. And it's not very long. So normally I would say less than 17 words is just nice, but the shorter, the better for a title. Next example of proposal title is Corporate Governance Mechanisms and Corporate Risk Management Disclosure, Evidence from Listed Companies in Iran. From this title, we know that the student is trying to examine whether corporate governance mechanism, which is very famous. We know a lot. There are many. I do not know exactly what is the the number of corporate governance mechanism. The common corporate governance mechanism include ownership structure, number of meeting. There are a lot. So, but we know from this title, obviously the student is testing whether this mechanism will improve corporate risk judgment or vice versa. I mean, whether the relationship is going to be positive or negative. For example, if the ownership structure is more to forage ownership, for example, perhaps the corporate risk management disclosure is going to be more. For example, we do not know what is actually the student is trying to examine, whether it's positive or negative relationship. The obvious part is we know the objective of the study by looking at the working title. It's very obvious. Example number 4, factors influencing economic growth of OIC countries. Again, this title is very clear. It's very short and also informative. From this title, I know the objective of the study. But we do not know what are the factors the student actually trying to examine. Maybe they are looking at what are the possible factors will improve the economic growth. Maybe political stability, maybe what else? The quality of governance of the country. There are many factors. But putting factors, we know that this study is trying to identify what actually contribute. Actually, it is even better if the student can actually highlight what theory they use to choose the factor. that may improve the economic growth of OIC country. So at the end of the day, we know that this title, they have cause, effect, and sample. The sample is OIC countries. We do not know how many OIC countries currently, but by looking at the whole thesis, then only we know exactly the number. So cause, effect, sample. Oh, next example is strategic capabilities, I think, managerial competencies, and management control system impact on performance of microfinance institution. Okay, so we know that this study is trying to examine whether if the company have, if the microfinance institution having a good strategic capabilities, managerial competencies, and management control system, this will affect performance of MFI. Next one is dynamic capabilities also, and risk management on enterprise resilient among Indonesian state-owned enterprise. So the student is trying to examine whether dynamic capabilities. I do not know what are dynamic capabilities. Maybe human resource, maybe quality of leaders, maybe what else? Marketing capabilities or IT capabilities. We do not know, but we know the student is trying to use dynamic capabilities item or variable and risk management, and trying to examine whether this will influence the level of enterprise resilience among GLCs, or in Indonesia they call it state-owned enterprise. Next one is challenges influencing money laundering investigation outcome in Malaysia. It's very obvious. The title is very short but informative. Okay, I finished the first part. That is title of research proposal. I move on to the second part, that is introduction. What you should write in the introduction. Introduction provide readers with the background information of the research. You have to tell readers what you actually study. So this is the critical part. You have to write good story on in the introduction part, because they will actually attract readers to read more. So when you write introduction part, it's good for you to start with general idea, then you move on to refine topic. So from broad, you narrow it down. For example, when you are talking about fraud just now, okay? Oh, what is actually fraud? You please do not assume, because as a student doing this research, you read a lot of articles on fraud. So, but you must tell us first, tell readers what is fraud in very brief sentence, maybe 1 or 2 line sentence. What is actually fraud? What is the problem? What is the situation? What is the scenario of fraud at global level, at international level? Because general, you have to start with general. You start with story of fraud in US, in UK, in Japan, in China. Okay, then you move down, because you're going to do in Malaysia, for example, you move down to the scenario of fraud in Malaysia. Then of course Malaysia is too broad. You have to further narrow it down into your sample. What is your sample? Or maybe you're looking into public sector. Okay, you narrow it down. Fraud in public sector in Malaysia is also as rampant as what is happening in developed countries. But public sector is still too broad. What or which part of public sector you are going to focus? Is it statutory bodies? Is it local authorities? Is it federal government? You have to narrow it down, okay? From the broad area just now of fraud in global level, move on fraud in Asian countries, perhaps move on to Malaysia, move on to public sector, then narrow to your sample of study, maybe local authorities, or I do not know what is your sample. Okay, that is the way to write the introduction. Even though it is introduction, we expect a lot of literature in it, name of author, you cite a lot of people because you are not supposed to define what is fraud, right? Who are you to define it? I believe you when you define what is fraud, for example, you will take from previous studies, so cite them. So you need to cite a lot, even though it is in the introduction. So in here I say your introduction, if you can write 1 to 2, 1.5 pages is good enough, because if you write too long, it look like it shows that you put things that shouldn't be in the introduction part. So if you put, or if you write 1.5 page, I think it's just nice for you to tell what is happening now, what is the gap, and what is the mission, or what is your plan of study. Okay, provide insight to the current or past problem, past and current. Should set up study question. Why the topic is important, why fraud is important, why CSR is important. Okay. What is already known. Okay, past studies has done on this. We believe that past study has done a lot on CSR. A lot of study has been done on risk management. A lot of studies has been done on fraud. But what are missing? What are the weaknesses of past study? What is the gap that you need to fill in? That's why it warrants your study, or that's why it triggers you into doing this area for your PhD or master. You may also refer to development in methodology or special circumstances. You may also actually not criticize, to highlight that past studies actually, in terms of methodology, they tend to use certain kind of methodology. For example, past studies on fraud tend to focus or tend to adopt qualitative method because of something, data not available or something. Most of them interview, they have reason for that. But when you do yours, you plan to move from qualitative to quantitative. That is actually the gap. Your comment is like past studies on fraud, past studies on risk management, past studies on CSR is very extensive, but past study tend to use this. Having use this method is good. However, then you put in your reason why you use, or why you change the method from qualitative to quantitative. Of course, you have to have a solid reason. So in India, I mentioned that at least you have to cite 15 to 20 references. Okay, but of course, having to cite a lot of references is good. More name in this section is good. Make sure you cite recent one. So at the end of the introduction part, you will say like, hence the study aims to examine this based on the problem issues that you mentioned earlier. So problem statement give a short summary of research problem that you have identified just now, right? You talk about risk management, you talk about fraud, you talk about CSR. So in the problem statement, you just summarize, don't go too detailed. Fraud is a big problem. Because of fraud, country's image is going to be affected. Foreign direct investment will be affected. A lot of problem happen. So you summarize it. We expect a good support for you to develop a problem statement. After this, I maybe give you example of problem statement so that you know how to write a problem statement. I don't say this is the best problem statement. A lot can be improved, but I just pick up from one of the thesis. So the student is doing on integrity violation. So they start with saying that the increasing trend of integrity violation in Malaysian government department, because I think the focus or the sample or the setting of the study is Malaysian government department. Because of integrity violation, country's image, reduce investor, the impact country image, reduce investors confidence, increase cost of service provision. This is not good. Then the one I put in bold, I say that past studies on integrity violation mostly focus on developed economies. So they give example. So again, in developing countries, they study a lot of study on fraud. However, they tend to focus on private sectors. So this particular student plan to do on public sectors. So they will end up the sentence by saying, based on this theory, they are going to examine whether these factors will contribute to integrity violation in the Malaysian public sector. So we finish with the problem statement, move on to the research objective. So basically, how many research objective for PhD and master? That is a normal or common question a student asks, okay? They are very difficult question. If I say four research objective, for five is okay. I think manageable. One research objective is is too little for a PhD. So maybe look at example that I'm going to give after this. So research objective give a concise and clear research objective that you want to achieve through your research. It should be measurable. And I always remind students that research objective should be in, you have to use words to describe research objective. For example, okay, this one I cut paste also from one of the students' thesis. The research objective, because the student is using organizational front triangle theory, so he started by saying, according to organizational front triangle theory, three core elements of ethical leadership, internal control system, ethical culture may influence integrity violation. So from this theory, he developed the hypothesis. Hence, this study aims to examine the relationship between ethical leadership, internal control system, ethical culture, and integrity violation. That is objective number one. The thing is actually he put everything in one sentence, but from this objective, actually the student need to develop at least four hypotheses because there are four variables: ethical leadership, internal control system, ethical culture, integrity climate effect on integrity violation. Okay, so objective number two, examine the relationship between ethical leadership, internal control system, ethical culture, and integrity climate. So the students start with the study aims to, because when it is objective, what is the your mission? My mission is to examine, to analyze, to explore, to determine, or those are the common word to describe research objective. Normally, if you are using qualitative approach, it's good to use the word to explore. But if you are using quantitative, the word normally used is to examine, to analyze, to determine. Okay. So next, research question. After your research objective, you have research question. Normally, research question is like repetition of what you have written in the research objective, but you put a question mark on it after at the end of the last sentence. For example, from the research objective just now, you see that the research question is: do ethical leadership, internal control system, ethical culture influence integrity violation? So this is quite common way of writing of research question. I know it's a bit of repetition. Next is hypothesis. Remember, if you are doing qualitative, do not actually write a research hypothesis. Research hypothesis is only for those who are using quantitative, okay? So normally we always match research objective and research hypothesis. assuming you're using quantitative. So when you develop objective one just now to examine between ethical leadership and integrity violation, then you develop hypothesis. So the hypothesis is like there is negative relationship between ethical leadership and integrity violation. Okay, that is the common way to develop research hypothesis. Hopefully, you can understand. Okay, next move to literature review. So what is literature review? A discussion of your knowledge about the topic that is supported by past study. Okay, of course, literature review is about past studies. Okay, suddenly I recall something. You be careful when you write literature review. Recently, I read a thesis. I'm glad it's written by a master by coursework. Master by coursework meaning they spend less than 6 months to write the thesis. Okay. Chapter 2 is literature review. But the student is doing on actually one of the ministry in Malaysia, Ministry of Defence, story about Ministry of Defence. So when I read the literature review is about 20 to I think 25 pages. But the whole write-up in chapter 2 is about Ministry of Defence, the chronology or the development of Ministry of Defence. That is a wrong, that is not literature review, I would say. Okay, literature review is past studies related to your area. Ministry of Defence is only the sample, okay, the background of the study. So in the literature review, you have to look at the variable of your study compared to or relate to the literature review. What have been found by previous researchers on the variable that you examine or in terms of the relationship between the cause and the effect. Okay. So literature review is not a study by study or article by article description of studies previously done. This is common way of writing. I mean, I notice student is doing this a lot. What happened, for example, you're doing on CSR just now, factors affecting CSR or yeah, maybe take a simple example, factors affecting corporate social responsibility. Maybe what first factors is uh, leadership, for example. So what happened to student is they will read one article on relationship between leadership and CSR. So assuming this article is written by Taylor's, so the student said, Taylor's 2019 carry out a study on leadership and CSR among companies listed in, say, where is it, Hong Kong Stock Exchange, for example, I do not know. Then the study collect data from 2010, 2015, discover this using this kind of analysis. Okay, the next paragraph, study by Ahmad 2014 among company listed in Bursa Malaysia, discover that there is a strong or positive or negative relationship between leadership and CSR. So the students tend to, I would say, cut and paste from this article, one paragraph. Take another article, the second paragraph. Third article, third paragraph. That is not a good literature review. Okay. But of course, at this stage, you just started your PhD, you just started your master. It is we understand that there is the learning process along the way. I think your supervisor will help you from how to actually convert this descriptive literature review into critical literature review. So don't get too upset if you are not able to write critical literature review at this stage, okay? So you have 3 years to learn. We didn't expect you to get everything during your semester 1 and semester 2. So good literature review will outline the important research trend. When you read articles on your related area, actually, what more if you summarize it nicely in the form of table? I'll show you a table later. You can see the trend. For example, if you look at study on fraud, for example, you list according to year. The late, more recent one later. So you start with the old articles. You look at the chronology. Maybe you realize something like um, study on fraud actually tend to be very much conceptual in nature, meaning there is no data collection. It's concept. Logically, if leadership is good, ethical leadership is high, then integrity violation is going to be very low. This one, there is no data to support this statement, but a lot of write up on that, starting maybe 2080 to 2000, 1980 to 2000. So you may comment that, oh, the trend of past studies on fraud tend to be very much conceptual in nature from 1980 to 2000. Starting early 2000, you notice that uh, researchers start actually collecting data of identifying reason of fraud using qualitative approach by interviewing fraudster, by interviewing enforcement officer, for example. Then of late, you notice that trend is actually researcher trend to adopt quantitative. So from actually your analysis, you develop a story that these are the chronology of research in fraud. So it shows that you have actually developed the storyboard on the chronology of fraud. So from there, you will notice that there is a gap. Start from conceptual, moving to qualitative, then now actually moving into quantitative. Since it is just started, the quantitative, people tend to focus on developed countries, for example, as argued by after the student just now. Then what is happening? Not many studies actually focusing on public sector. So this is the gap that you are going to fill in. Okay. So when you do critical literature review, you may criticize in terms of the method. Past study looking into this area or past study that examine this area, CSR tend to be qualitative. Or looking at the population, past study tended to focus on big companies, focus on developed countries. Or maybe you comment on the measurement. Past study trying to use a measurement proposed by this. Whereas recently, there is new measurement proposed by provide reason or provide the new measurement. Then you actually from there you can show that there is a gap that you need to fill in so that it become the contribution of your study. Okay. Then, of course, you have to discuss whether the articles or the past articles that you have read, the way they present it, how do they actually interpret the result, the limitation, you have to discuss the article. So, in a way, you have to read the article, understand it, and able to criticize or critically analyze the article. Then only you can prepare a good literature review. Okay, this is actually good versus bad literature review. Basically, when I explained just now, I already mentioned how What are the criteria of good literature review? Good literature review must be synthesized in nature. You have to critically evaluate each paper and identify the strength and the weakness of that paper. Okay. Whereas when you cut and paste one article, one paragraph, that is not a good literature review. That is actually classified under poor literature review. But as I said, I don't want to demotivate you. You are new, so it's okay for at this stage if you can actually prepare literature review in the form of table. The earliest article you put it first. After that, followed by the second earlier. So what happened? You will notice that this table will help you to do or to prepare a critical literature review. Or maybe in the worst case scenario, if you are not able to prepare a critical literature review, your literature review tend to be very much descriptive, one paragraph, one author. You must at least try to prepare or summarize whatever you have described earlier in one or two paragraphs to summarize everything. So that should be your at least effort in ensuring or in preparing critical literature review. So these are among the common words to describe literature review: demonstrated, concern, compared. I think if you read article, you can just refer to the most commonly word to prepare a critical literature review. Last, a theory and theoretical framework. Yeah. Next step is theory and theoretical framework. I understood. I always receive question from students: is it important to have theory in the research proposal? My answer: yes and no. To me, having theory is enable you to answer examiner's question easily. Yeah, but I saw a lot of thesis. They pass their thesis. I mean, they get the PhD without having theory in it. So having theory in your thesis is good, but not to have theory does not mean you will not be able to get your PhD. Okay, so I'll show you why theory is important in writing a research proposal. First of all, what is actually theory? Theory is a systematic set of relationships providing consistent, comprehensive explanation of a phenomenon. Normally, theory is not very specific. Okay, theory is used to prepare a theoretical framework. From theory, you develop theoretical framework. So, what is theoretical framework? Theoretical framework is structure. Okay, the guideline how to proceed with your research. Okay. What I want to say just now, theory and theoretical framework. This is an example how I will show you how important it is to have theory in your proposal. Take example of this theory, this student. Okay, actually the theory that the student is using is organizational fraud triangle theory. This theory argue that fraud, organizational level fraud occurs because of three things: leadership, management, the control system, and the culture. So if you want to enhance or to mitigate fraud, you handle these three things. Take care of the leadership, take care of the control system, develop a good organizational or ethical culture. That's what the theory says. Okay, from this theory, the three variable here, the three factors, the student convert this into independent variable. This is what we call independent variable: ethical leadership, internal control system, ethical culture. But you notice in the theory, organizational triangle theory, they don't actually define what is ethical leadership. So the student need to find how to measure ethical leadership. Okay, internal control system also is not defined. They say management control system. Okay, so the student actually looking at one aspect of management control system, that is internal control system, because management control system is a huge area. It's not I don't think the student can do it. I mean, to complete the whole management control system. So in that case, they focus on internal control. What is the measurement? The theory actually do not tell how to measure internal control system. So what happens? Students have to find uh, established measurement of internal control system elements. So as the ethical culture. Okay. So I hope you realize that the relationship between theory and theoretical framework. Actually, the theoretical framework is developed based on the theory. Okay. So last but not least is the methodology. In this methodology, you have to describe in detail how are you going to conduct your research. Okay, what should be the item you have to describe in detail? Number one, you have to describe your population, your sampling. Okay, if you are doing CSR just now, what are the samples? Company listed in Bursa. How many company listed in Bursa as at today is 1st April 2020? How many? You have to tell how many. Are you going to take the whole sample? If yes, why? If no, why? So how are you going to take sample from this? Because in the Bursa, maybe you have 13 sector. I do not know how many sector. Are you going to take sample from by each sector? So you have to tell the sample. Okay. So the first section of research methodology is population and sampling. After that, you have to tell the instrument development, the research instrument. Okay. After that is the variable measurement. Oh yeah, I mentioned just now variable measurement. How do you measure internal control system? Where do you get the measurement from? Who have been using this measurement before? Okay. So if you have 4 variable or 5 variable, you have to explain one by one. Measurement for each of the variable. Okay. Next is data collection. How are you going to collect the data? Or are you going to use database? Because annual report of company listed in Bursa is available online. Or are you going to, in term of when come to the research related to CSR, database is the best data source. But if you are doing on fraud just now, how are you going to collect the data? Are you going to interview? Are you going to do questionnaire? Okay. Then I know this is actually a research proposal, but you must know how to do data analysis, your plan for data analysis. If you are doing qualitative, I hope at this point you know what are the software that can be used to analyze data, interview data. If you are using questionnaire, or if you are using secondary data annual report, what is the best software to analyze your data? At least you have to have some knowledge on that. We didn't expect you to go deeper, but you have to have that section in the research methodology part. And of course, this is tentative timetable. When are you going to start? What are you supposed to do in semester 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6? Make sure when you prepare timetable, since you're full-time student, or if you're part-time student, make sure you finish within 4 years. Or if you're full-time student, make sure your submission date is in your semester 6. Okay. And of course, reference. Be careful with reference. Now you have a lot of software. Some use Android or whatever software you use. As long as you are good in handling this software, any software they have pro and cons. So make sure if you cite journal, you have to have author's year, title, issue, volume, page number. Okay, for all the reference, make sure what is written inside the text appear in the reference. Number 2, and always always complain that incomplete reference in the research proposal. So even though it is lasting and it does not affect your write-up, but it shows the quality of your research proposal if you actually overlook or you take for granted this section. Okay, and of course reference must be recent and adequate. Recent, if you now is 2010 20, I don't expect reference 2000 1990. Study by Ahmad 1990 on the relationship between this and that, unless Ahmad is so famous or something unique about this study. Otherwise, you just cite the most recent, I would say recent, maybe 2010 onwards. Okay. Of course, if you use theory, established theory, the theory is going to be very old. That one, okay. Of course, last attachment, if you have attachment, maybe when you do preliminary work, you interview policymaker to get ideas on what you're supposed to, you plan to do. Maybe you can just put in the appendix, it shows that you have actually started preliminary work on the area that you plan to do. Common mistake, actually, yeah, topic is too broad. But if you follow the concept, topic must be must reflect the objective of the study. It must contain cause, effect, and setting. So you will not fall into that common mistake category. Research problem is not clear. You need a lot of guidance from your supervisor. I know. Research problem is not very easy to write, but because you know why? Because you have to put everything in a limited length of writing. So that's why you want to have your issues in the problem statement. Then after that, you want to explain your IV. If you have in many variable, you tend to put everything in that. Your dependent variable, so you have to put in that. You want to explain the theory inside that. You want to blame past study failed to do this and that. That's why maybe having a student having difficulties to write research problem is okay again if you are not able to prepare good um, problem statement at this stage. I'm very sure your supervisor will be able to guide you because this involves hands-on. Okay, research objective is not clear. Research objective is not clear. If you have a strong theory, your sample is very clear. I don't think you are going to um I mean I don't think you are going to have problem in writing a good research objective. So research question, critical literature review, you are not able to write critical literature review. Okay, slowly, learn slowly, inshallah, one day you'll be able to write good critical literature review. Inability to identify gap, this one I really disagree. You know why? When I ask student, what different is your study compared to that study or the other study? The students are able to explain in detail. Oh, that study do not do this. That study actually fail to use this. A lot of actually gap between the student study carried out by student and the rest of the people that they refer to. Unfortunately, it is not mentioned in the proposal. The gap, okay? They know it, but they don't put it in paper, okay? Unclear research contribution, the flow of thought. Yeah, flow of thought is not easy to have a good flow of thought. Student not sure whether to start from dependent variable or to start from theory or to start with the independent variable. Any of the point should be okay as long as you have a good flow of thought. Unclear PhD research significant. Inshallah, along the way, the supervisor will help you to write. I know you know your contribution, but you are having difficulties to write the research contribution. Unclear proposed methodology, so sampling, not sure not only sampling, not sure you're not sure what are the population. Okay, so for example, you're studying about internal auditor. So what is the population? How do you know the population? The population does not exist. I mean, the database of the population does not exist. So how are you going to write on that? Yeah, I understand. So you have to refer thesis how the students write this section if there is no database on the total population. Okay, so poor writing skill, that is common, but of course you are new, you're inshallah we are learning. After 3 years everything's going to be better. Challenge in writing, yeah, writing is not an easy task. um, you're given 3 years to learn. Inshallah one day you will be able to write good thesis and inshallah good paper also. So these are problem in writing good proposal. Problem come from emotional problem, technical problem, and also environment problem. So don't take problem as a problem, but take it as a challenge for you to move faster and get your PhD within the time period of 3 years. So this is the journey of PhD journey. You are now on the phase one in which you are preparing the DRP for your proposal. Inshallah, after that, it's going to be better. And of course, people keep saying that PhD is a lonely journey, so don't make PhD as a lonely journey. Make friends, okay? Make friends, discuss with others, and then you will enjoy the journey. Inshallah, one day you'll be able to finish your PhD. Okay, with that, I really thank you for listening to my talk on research proposal. I hope that now is 2020, in 2022 or latest by 2023 convocation, I'll see you all on the stage to get your school. Okay, with that, good luck. Okay, and my last advice, um, getting PhD for student doing PhD, um, it does not necessarily for you to be a very smart student to get PhD. I come across many students who are smart, but level of perseverance is not that high. At the end of the day, not able to finish. So perseverance is very important in getting your PhD. So you have finished what you have started. Good luck. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.